Hi, everybody, and welcome. It is Friday, so it's Connetics USA weekly show, Onwards and Upwards. Everything that a healthcare worker needs to know about coming to live and work in the United States. I am your host, Tanya Friedman, CEO of Connetics USA, and today's show is our legal Q&A. If you are interested in coming to the United States, please apply online to Connetics USA /apply, and our team are waiting on hand to speak to you to see how we can help you make your American dream a reality. Today, I am joined by our panel. We have our legal experts, Chris Musello and Mike Hammond, joining us. Welcome.
Hey, Tanya.
Happy Friday. Happy New Year, Chris and Mike.
Thank you. To you as well.
Yeah, thanks. Mazel tov. Happy New Year, everybody.
Nice to see both of you today. If you are joining us from anywhere around the world, please put your name into the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. We love to see everybody watching all over the world. There are millions of people right now that are watching the Onwards and Upwards show. So we are so excited to have our first show of the new year. The format, as I think most people know who will watch Onwards and Upwards, is today your expert legal panel are here to answer any of your legal questions. Coming to the United States is a complicated process. It can be very exciting, but also scary and nerve-wracking. And I know that there are lots of questions that our viewers are wanting to ask and pick the brains of Chris and Mike. I see we already have some questions in the chat. So Philip is saying hi, Marcus is saying hi, Dima Katso is saying Happy New Year, Dima from South Africa, my home country. Nice to see you, Dima. Christian is sending a heart, Arlene is saying hi from Jamaica, Merlin saying hi, Marcus is saying hi, Agwati from Nepal, Arlen, Happy New Year. Okay, and Mirren and Rita have our first questions. So I have a few questions that have been sent to me and some in the chat. If you have questions, put them in the chat and let's get started. So the first question I'm going to ask Chris is from Nia. How long does it take to get for you to change the status from I-140 to approved once it goes to the Department of State, to the National Visa Center? What is the timing, Chris?
Yeah, the short answer is we're normally seeing something like 4 to 6 months from the approval of the I-140 for a nurse whose visa category EB3 is current. We're seeing about 4 to 6 months, but there's an enormous variance with that. And the variance is at least on in two dimensions. So the first dimension is we have seen some very inconsistent processing from the service center approval, delivering the petition from the service center to the National Visa Center. We've seen that, especially out of the Texas Service Center, sometimes take months, really with not much of a reason other than the excuse that Mike and I have heard from the U.S. government all the time over the last 3 years almost, which is, when they do something poorly, they just simply say the word COVID, and they seem to think that gets them out of any sort of work. So that's one variance that can extend that 4 to 6 months, unfortunately longer. And then the second variance is the local embassy themselves. Sometimes the embassies are backlogged. Sometimes they're shut down for local reasons, either staffing reasons, maybe, sometimes they're shut down for holidays, natural disasters, these kinds of things. So it's another one that can extend it out. So I'd say anything in the 4 to 6 month range is absolutely normal. Even getting a little beyond that isn't unusual. And then once you get far beyond that, that's when we start to get concerned that the case is somehow stuck in the process.
So, Chris, if a case is stuck in the process, what can be done about that?
Yeah. So the first thing is to show up to your place of worship and pray, because it's a difficult one to.
Chris, is that your legal advice?
Pray? Oh, yeah. No. Mike and I took that class. I took it a year or two after he did in law school.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. Light a candle, make a prayer, something. If that doesn't work, then it's really just, in my mind, brute force on the lawyer side, sometimes on your side as a nurse, and sometimes on the employer side. And what I mean by brute force is, once a week or so, once every other week, we are, trying to follow up, mainly through emails. A lot of these agencies have really gotten away from any ability to call them, which is frustrating. And then in extreme situations, we bring in what we call congressional help. So the U.S. government typically, although not actually right now, has a House of Representatives that is in session. And each district, roughly each city in the United States, has a House member who's in Congress in Washington, D.C., and then they have staffs both in Washington, D.C. and locally here. And we will work with the local staff at the facility that you're working at. So, for instance, if you're going to a facility in St. Louis, Missouri, we would work with the local congressman or congresswoman in St. Louis. We'd work with her office to contact both USCIS and the State Department to try and get that case nudged and pushed back into the normal processing flow.
Yeah. And I can say even from Connetics side that we have had, sometimes this happens. I know Chris and Mike, you've seen these things happen, unfortunately, in your experience. But we have had success by going through congressional means and measures to try and nudge those cases when they do get stuck in the process. And I jest, but of course, definitely pray to make sure that those cases get through. Okay, so Mirren has a question, Mike. My embassy in Abu Dhabi, I'm documentary qualified on March 1st, 2022. I'm Indian but born in Kuwait. Hence, my PD is already current. My several other Philippine colleagues who were DQ'd during September and October were given interview dates in Abu Dhabi embassy. I've sent expedite requests twice, but they denied both my request. Can employer or attorney do something here, or do you suggest me to move my case from Abu Dhabi to Mumbai? So, Mike, this is a similar story of a delay here in getting a consulate interview. But do you see any kind of pattern that maybe one nationality is being favored over another?
Well, I think in this case, first of all, my first general answer is that it is extremely rare that we would ever recommend moving a case. Moving a case in general creates significant delays and is often really hard to get back on track. So moving a case is viewed as almost a last resort kind of a thing. I'm going to guess that in this case, because the individual has an Indian passport, that the consulate is not considering them as current. And again, I'm just guessing, but that would seem logical. And this is going to require some intervention from either the employer, the attorney, or again, as Chris mentioned, congressional help to make sure that this candidate gets viewed under the correct chargeability category, which obviously the USCIS recognized as such, and probably the approval notice has COB on it, but it's likely the consulate has not. So I think this would require some intervention, starting directly with the consulate, and go from there. But I would not move the case.
Okay, so there you go, Mirren. Don't move the case. And again, it's a matter of trying to get as many different measures in place so you can continue to try and expedite, get your employer involved, the congressional intervention, as well as the attorney. And hopefully with prayer and with a combined effort, your case will be able to move forward as it should do. Rita has a question. Nigerian embassy has not been scheduling interviews. Is there anything that can be done for nurses that are already employed in the US to be scheduled for interviews? Chris?
If they're already employed in the US, they shouldn't need to go to the embassy in most instances. So I would suggest you talk to the attorney that you're working with, because that would be unusual that you would need to go back to Nigeria. Now, of course, you may have followed a join partners, family members, children. On the broader point about Nigeria, yeah, we've seen a few of these sub-Saharan African embassies struggle. I know that we've been talking with the State Department on these issues, and they seem to be turned on and turned off at various points of the year. Those particular embassies and consulates, my senses are very understaffed. And so they are trying to prioritize U.S. citizen services, i.e. if you're a U.S. citizen in, for instance, Nigeria, and you've lost your passport, the consulate is prioritizing that over employment-based visas. Having said that, you definitely want to contact your employer and your lawyer to make sure that they are continuing to talk to the State Department to see when some of those embassies are coming online. Because again, we're seeing that they're coming online and then they're turning back off and then they're coming online again. And so I can't speak specifically to Nigeria now, the first week of January. One more point, Tanya, which is we always see at this time of the year from roughly mid-December to early January that the embassies and consulates slow down to basically nothing. And that's just a function of the holiday season. So if the issue is specific to the last 2 or 3 weeks, my guess is that'll probably get sorted out in the next few weeks.
Okay, so Rita, hopefully your case will get moving very soon.
Yeah, Tanya, if I can add something real quick on that, just some positive news out of Nigeria is we did have a nurse that was similar scenario here in the U.S., but was ineligible for adjustment that got consular processing, and they had their interview 2 weeks ago in Lagos. So they are at least from time to time scheduling interviews. So I don't think it's a blanket issue. I think, as Chris said, it's kind of a on and off again.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Mike. So that is hopeful. John Paul is saying hi from the Philippines, Philip from India, Erna from South Africa, Jennifer from London, Mojisola, I hope I've got that right, is wishing you a prosperous year from Nigeria, Mildred from Dubai, TCR, good morning. Oh, it's Anna Cruz, our friend Anna. Marcus is saying hallelujah. A good one, Marcus. We love that. Shell is saying, we noted there's backlogs in issuing fee bills now compared to months ago. Mike, is that something that you're noticing, backlogs in issuing fee bills?
We're not noticing a large delay, a significant delay in issuing fee bills. As Chris mentioned about holidays, we generally see delays, at this time of year, and it takes a little while to catch back up because, frankly, the MVC offices are just like all of our offices and workplaces, in that everyone's involved in time off and doing a lot of extra things and maybe partying too much, and et cetera. So, but we are not seeing a major change in fee bill issuance right now.
Okay. Chris, would you agree with that?
Yeah, same answer. I agree.
Okay. Okay. Philip is saying, I'm watching from India. I'm interested to study in the United States. Chris, can you speak to Philip a little bit about how you would go about studying in the United States? From an immigration perspective?
So most folks who study in the United States enter the United States on something called an F1 student visa. Now, just as an aside, there's other ways you can study in the United States, including if your spouse comes in on a green card or you come in on a green card. Green card allows you to study in the United States. If you enter on many dependent visas, so for instance, if your spouse is an H-1B and you enter on an H-4, that generally allows you also to study in the United States. But the most common way is through an F1 student visa. And the F1 student visa program is generally accomplished like this. So first of all, you find a university that you'd like to apply to in the United States, and you get you apply and you get accepted into whatever program that the school has. Then the school, you'll work with the Foreign Student Office, and the school will issue a document called a Form I-20. And what that Form I-20 is it's the local university that you wanted to attend, or the U.S. university rather that you want to attend, their acknowledgement that you have applied and been admitted into the program. And then through that process, through that document, you're able to schedule a local appointment at your local embassy in Nairobi or Tokyo or Manila or wherever you're living and you get an F1 student visa. And that F1 student visa is fairly straightforward. You enter the United States. The terms of your education are dictated on that form I-20. Once you're in the United States, you can't work on the student visa, or at least not for a little while. But you can attend class consistent with what that I-20 says. And then this is important. If you're going to change your curriculum, or even more importantly, if you're going to change your university, if you want to transfer to a different school, you need to go through that entire process again. Although if you're in the United States, you don't have to go back outside the United States to the embassy. That form I-20 often will be sufficient enough for you to change your educational program.
Okay, so there you go, Philip. All the details of how to come and live and study in the United States. And we actually did a whole show on that last year. So please check out the Connetics USA website for previous shows on coming to the United States as a student. Singh is tagging a friend, Eshwar. Thank you for doing that, Singh. And paying it forward. Onwards and Upwards is all about paying it forward for others. So we appreciate you doing that. John Paul has a question. Hi, may I ask, after our wedding, what are the next steps for me and my partner processing our visa application, DS-260, so that I can have her as my dependent? Can you tell us the process? I already have my DS-260. Thank you and God bless. Mike?
Okay, so it depends upon adding a spouse that you weren't married to when your case first gets started. Depends upon where you're at in the process. Has your I-140 already been approved? And has the fee bill already been issued? Have you already been DQ'd? Have you already had your interview, et cetera? So the circumstances are going to be a little different on each person. And there's also going to be a little variations from the consulates as to which consulate you're at. But generally speaking, it's pretty easy to add family members, such as a spouse. Particularly if you're at the fee bill stage, or you've already paid your fee bill, but you haven't been scheduled for the interview yet. Usually we can work directly with the NVC to simply get an additional fee bill added. So there's several ways to do it. So I would not be too terribly concerned about, because I don't know enough facts in your case to know what specifically for you, but just know that it can be done, and generally without much delay. So I would just reach out to your employer, sponsor, attorney, and let them know the circumstances, and they can create a plan for you. But it should be very, very straightforward.
Okay, good. Well, congratulations, John Paul, on your wedding. That's exciting, coming to America and getting married. Lee is asking, I'm a foreign educated nurse with NCLEX in the US. Can I apply to Connetics, and what would the visa process look like? Yes, Lee Ling, you can definitely apply to Connetics. Please go to the Connetics USA website /apply, and our team are waiting on hand to speak to you and see how we can help you. We have thousands of jobs all over the United States in acute care hospitals, long-term care, rehab facilities, home health, all different kinds of settings and in all the states. So we'd love to help you with your American dream. Chris, can you maybe share with Lee Ling what the visa process would look like for a nurse who has no idea how they would be coming to the United States from an immigration perspective?
Sure, yeah. So the first is you want to find a good hospital system or employer here in the United States to go with. And again, I certainly recommend Connetics, the AMN team. Tanya has and her group have, they've migrated just literally thousands of nurses around the world into the United States. And so I can speak personally to the great work that they do. And so once they find a hospital system for you, you'll have to interview, obviously, and Tanya will help you do that and find a good employer for you in the United States. Once that happens, most of the employers who have an ongoing recruitment program, we can begin to file your immigration visa case really within just a few weeks of your offer and acceptance of that job offer. Typically, it takes under a month for your approval notice to come under something called the Premium Processing Program. Once that's approved, currently right now for natives of every country in the world with the exception of China and India, should have their visa interview in something like 4 to 8 months after the approval of that I-140. Again, we talked a little earlier about some of the delays we're seeing in certain areas, maybe Nigeria and some other areas. But as Mike said, even Nigeria, he had a case recently moved through just in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So maybe we're starting to see some good news there. And that's it. And then once you go to your visa appointment at the embassy, you are issued a stamp in your passport. Typically, that means you have to enter the United States in 6 months. Now, there's some criteria you need to work through that process. I don't want to give everything, but the big ones are, number one, before we're able to file your visa form, your Form I-140 here in the United States, you need to have done a few things. And most importantly, you need to have passed the U.S. NCLEX exam, which is the licensing exam in all 50 states here in the United States. That's a big one. The other big one is before you go to your embassy appointment, you need to have taken and passed the English fluency exam, which is ordinarily the IELTS exam. And then the IELTS exam becomes a core component of something called a visa certificate, healthcare worker certificate, commonly called a VisaScreen if you get it through the CGFNS organization. There is a competitor organization that came up, I think, about 18 months ago, called Joseph Silvany. They've been issuing these certificates, like I said, for about 18 months. I actually did recently hear of an embassy, a U.S. embassy in sub-Saharan Africa that did not accept the Silvany certificate. That appears to be a training issue. My guess is those issues will go away as the Silvany certificate becomes more and more common. But the point is, you'll need either the Silvany or the CGFNS VisaScreen at the visa appointment, or else you will not be issued your green card. In fact, most employers don't even want you to pay your fee bill and move through with that last step until you have that VisaScreen in hand. So those are the couple of the big benchmarks throughout the process. There's a lot of smaller things as well, but I think that's a good big picture overview.
Thank you, Chris. That's a lot of information. I know Li Ling and anyone who is looking to come to the United States, I would also suggest that you go to the Connetics USA website and check out our success path. There is a very easy to follow, detailed roadmap of what the process is, where you start, because it can be very confusing to know how to go about it. And you'll see on the screen all of the steps that Chris has just gone through in terms of the success path and the roadmap that you need to take to come and live and work in the United States. You can also watch some of our shows that we've done on the green card process. There are guidebooks on the website, so feel free. These are free guidebooks. Download these. Free information to educate yourself about the process. It can be very confusing, but it doesn't need to be. There is a lot of information that we share with you for free to help you to understand better the process and the steps involved. Dennis is saying hi from Saudi. David from Kenya. Oh, Li Ling is asking about a visitor's visa. Mike, would you ever suggest someone comes here on a visitor's visa to get a job?
Absolutely not. A visitor's visa is designed for a specific purpose. You're making a representation, both at the U.S. Consulate if you had to obtain a visa, or if you already have a visa when you're entering at the border, that I am here for XYZ. I'm going to a wedding, I'm going to a funeral, I'm going to visit Disney World, whatever I'm going to do. And I'm going to look for a job is not one of them. Or my idea is I land here and I find an employer and then I'm going to convert. So I think in most cases, if that's your intention, I would definitely discourage you from that. There are situations, however, that if you are here as a visitor and circumstances change and an opportunity comes up, that you can convert from a visitor's visa to a green card. There are a lot of hospitals that are very wary of that process because of the representation you've already made and the potential of problems. And so there are some who are frankly not willing to go that route. There are others that from a practical perspective, it can be fairly difficult. If you're here in the US, obviously you can't work as a visitor, and it can take 6 months to get a work permit through the U.S. process. If you're here in the States, through what they call the adjustment of status process. So that can sometimes be practically difficult. If you filed a case shortly after you came into the U.S., and then the USCIS makes the assumption that you had a preconceived intent to immigrate, and they can not only deny that case but charge you with visa fraud. And if that in fact happens, then your path back to the U.S. at a later date is pretty insurmountable. And so the risks are very, very large to try to immigrate off of a visitor's visa. So we would generally discourage that.
Okay, so that's really good advice, Li-Ling. And for anybody watching, each visa has its own intention. If you intend to come on a visitor's visa, you're coming as a visitor, you're coming on vacation. If you intend to come on a green card, that is a permanent visa. So always be mindful of that. You don't want to make a mistake. And then, as Mike says, have a big problem on the back end. So I'm really grateful that Li-Ling asked that question. So hopefully that can be a warning for anybody who is thinking of doing something like that. Always want to do things in the right way. Okay, Hugo is saying hi. Eufomo is saying hello. TY is saying, Happy New Year. Any update on the EB interview at Johannesburg Consulate? DQ'd since September and no appointment yet. Chris, any comments on that one?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that's a very long period of time. As we've said, it's really a 4 to 8 month process. So DQ'd in September, while frustrating, I'm sure, I think that's unfortunately fairly normal. So so unfortunately, I don't think that's that unusual, even though intuitively it should be much better.
Okay, so there, TY, it's just a matter of waiting and praying and patience, and hopefully you will get to the consulate soon. Elaine is asking about the Joseph Silney VisaScreen. Mike, I know that Chris touched on this, that Joseph Silney now has a process that people can go through to get the VisaScreen. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, for many years, CGFNS was the only game in town. If you needed what's technically called a Section 343 healthcare worker certificate, you had no choice but to go to CGFNS if you were an RN. And they termed theirs internally VisaScreen. That's why we all use that term. Silney, as Chris had mentioned, came on board about 18 months ago, simply as a competitor. We can offer this as well. They got approval through the U.S. government, so that theirs should be accepted just as routinely as the CGFNS. We have not seen any major clients shift to them, but I think there is some people are exploring that. I think often it's a choice of the supplier company, hospital, et cetera, as to who they want to work with, who they're comfortable with. As Chris mentioned, he's had one case. I think we've had one that was also held up at a consulate that they were not aware of the rule. That ultimately got resolved relatively quickly within a couple of months. So we're certainly not discouraging anyone from using them. We simply haven't seen any widespread shift yet.
Okay, good. So you have some clarification on that option, Elaine. Fatima is asking, I would like to ask for my colleague. They stopped renewing his RN license in Jordan as they stopped renewing for non-Jordanian. He is Palestinian who lives in Jordan and currently working as a nurse in the UAE. He has been DQ and just waiting for his interview at the US Embassy in Abu Dhabi. He has his visa screen with him too. Will they need it in the embassy interview? Is it going to affect his application? Chris?
Yeah, so it should not impact his application. He's applying for an American nursing license and an American visa. And so the fact that he's unlicensed or no longer continues to be licensed in a particular country shouldn't be a problem, number one. Number two, my sense, although I can't speak specifically to this issue, my sense is the U.S. embassies in places like Jordan are familiar with issues unique to that region of the world. For instance, Palestine, Palestinian problems, extending visas and licenses in those countries. So I think the good news is I doubt that would be any sort of hindrance to him getting the green card. But speaking specifically, I can't say specifically, but in a general sense, I doubt it would be much of a problem.
Okay, good. So hopefully your friend Fatima doesn't have to worry about that. Wakar is from Pakistan, wants to know how to relocate to the US. Wakar, we've just gone through the process, so check out the Connetics USA success path on our website. It gives you all the steps that you need to take to come and live in the United States, and check out our shows, as I mentioned, and the guidebooks. It gives you a lot of information of the process and hopefully makes it very easy and simple to follow. Dokia is from Ghana, a Connetics nurse. Hi, Dokia. Nice to have you here. And Dokia, has a question about school for her brothers. Dokia, I think we already answered that question about coming as a student, so hopefully that was helpful. Camille is saying, I'm waiting for an interview date in the consulate in Mexico. I had one expedite request denied. I'm waiting for answer of a new expedite I sent. How is the timing for interview dates in Mexico or the acceptance of expedite requests, Mike?
Our general thought on expedite request, and this possibly shows a little bit of my cynicism, is that generally speaking, all expedite requests are being accepted and approved, and when everything's approved, nothing's approved. So the getting an expedite request is not necessarily very helpful. We are not seeing any significant delays in Mexico any more than we are in any other consulate for our end. So there are some local stuff that happens that causes delays. There's just holiday stuff. There's a variety of other factors that can create the delay, but we're not seeing major delays in one particular consulate over another that maybe we were a year and a half ago. So, in this fact pattern that was presented, we don't know how long you've been waiting. So it could be that your waiting is fairly normal, as Chris just answered. Where the individual looking from Johannesburg has been DQ'd since September, that's not an unusual wait at all. So if your scenario is the same in Mexico, it would be the same answer. If you've been, we kind of look at maybe that 8-9 month mark as maybe something's going on, maybe something's wrong, particularly if we match other cases that have similar fact patterns to you and they're getting interviews much faster and we see a pattern. Keeping in mind, offices like ours and Chris's and Tanya's team and everything, we deal with lots and lots of cases. So we can basically gauge what's going on based off of someone else's case who's has similar circumstance as you. And so that's generally what we go off of rather than any set time frame. And that's where I think at the beginning of the show, Chris outlined some of the steps for delays at interviews, such as I think Chris used the phrase of providing brute force. We sometimes call it nagging here, where you're just constantly repeatedly going back to the consulate trying to get, hey, can we get an interview? What's the problem in getting an interview? In a very nice, kind way. And then if that doesn't work, then congressional help would be the next step. And most teams, like Tanya's team, is great at getting congressional help if that becomes necessary. I think often we all are a little impatient in life. I know I am. And we like to jump to that right away of, hey, can't we get congressional help involved to start with? And we do have to recognize the consulates are extremely busy, some of them very understaffed. And they've gone through the COVID, an unprecedented time where they were closed, and you have some waits for certain visa categories of 2 and 3 years. And so they're trying to accommodate a lot of different factors, and we have to be a little respectful of that we're not the only thing on their desk today, and we have to work with them to kind of help them as well. So jumping straight to congressional help is, in my opinion, not a good answer.
Yeah, I would agree, Mike. I think the word that you use there is appropriate, a little bit of nagging in a nice way, from a combined effort perspective, and that's how we have to navigate it. I think the good news, though, is that a lot of the consulates have made progress. There definitely is, Mike is nodding his head, there definitely is progress. So we are seeing things catching up in terms of the backlogs, and that's the good news. So we need to hold on to that positive. Kala has a question. I have paid my relatives' fee bill, but my own fee bill has not been paid as yet by my agency employer, and my priority date was September 6, 2022. Would that affect me in any way possible, Chris?
Did she say which one did she say was paid, or did she say neither of them were paid?
I have paid my relatives' fee bill, but my own fee bill. I think maybe she's meaning relatives fee bill, like maybe the family's fee bill, but maybe the employer hasn't paid
My
the
guess
nurse's
is
fee
what
bill. I'm
she's saying
guessing.
is she paid the lawyer for her, maybe her spouse and children.
I'm not sure.
But that so I mean, this isn't, the good news is this isn't really a legal question. I would probably ask her, contacting us is probably not very helpful. I would just talk to your employer and ask them to pay the fee bill. As we mentioned earlier, some employers will not pay the fee bill if you have not passed the English fluency exam, for instance. So there could be reasons about it, but this doesn't sound like a legal question. This sounds more like a process question. And so I would say to talk to the law firm, talk to the recruiter, and talk to the employer. I'm not sure there's any, unless Mike, you got $345 lying around you want to send to this candidate?
I don't. I'm looking, but I don't.
Okay. He's generous. I can tell you that. I've known Mike for 20 plus years. So.
Very
He's generous, and he knows how to nag.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Paul is watching from Brazil. Gina is asking about the London embassy. I'm delayed with issuing visa interviews. I'm currently in England waiting to be DQ'd. Chris?
Yeah. So we've got a theme, I think, Tanya, here in 2023. So I'll reiterate again, but I think two things are going on. One, the embassies they're just very slow, as we've seen by a number of these questions. And then two, and this is unique, I think, to this time of year. I think we generally see slowdowns during the holiday season. Those embassies, like all other organizations, people take off, they leave the embassy and move home for vacations, things like that. There's just natural turnover as some embassy members, maybe they're phasing out of Manila and they're going to take over a post in, I don't know, Rome, Italy or something like that. And then some of the Parisian embassy members are going to come into Manila. So this time of the year, it's not, it's common for there to be slowdowns. So while it's frustrating and you have every right to be concerned, the good news is you're not alone, and you can tell that by the amount of questions we've gotten today on the call.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a pattern today. If you are asking that question in the chat and we've already answered it, please refer to previous conversations in the show, because I'm trying to get through as many questions as I can, and I'm just watching the clock, and the clock is ticking. Joseph is asking, my visa screen is not ready yet, but I got an interview date already in the US Embassy London. Do you recommend me to proceed with the interview or wait for the visa screen, Mike?
So a couple of things. First of all, I'd want to know why the visa screen is not ready yet. Is it a matter of a particular test hasn't been passed yet, or it is simply a processing? If it's a matter of the test hasn't been passed yet, then I would definitely cancel the interview and wait for that. If it is a matter of processing, I think I would probably hold out to the last minute and contact whether you're working with CILNI or whether you're working with CGF&S to see if there's something that can be done to try to meet that date. And then I think you want to speak to your employer and the attorney, your recruiting agency, to make sure what they want to do, because there are consulates that technically you could be denied, and then you're looking at doing another process to get you back to that point again, and that process is going to have cost involved and timing involved. And there are employers that would say, we don't want to go take that risk of the consulate holding your case for you for the VisaScreen to show up. We would rather you simply cancel the interview and wait. So, but again, the very first question would be, why isn't the VisaScreen there? That's probably the most important.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that gives a lot of clarity and a lot of information for your question, Joseph. Hopefully it'll come in time. Okay, and hopefully you've passed the English exam if you were required to take the English, because that is obviously a big headache for many healthcare workers. Ikati is asking, I'd like to ask what options are really available for cases where an applicant prefers to be interviewed in the country where they are currently working, and for their dependents to be interviewed separately in their home country. My case at the moment was rejected by the NVC to have this option while I'm in the DQ stage. However, I'd like to know which stage I can still request this option be granted, since going for vacation for the interview is difficult. Needs enlightenment on this. Chris?
Yeah, so I need to know the specific reasons why it was rejected. That's pretty unusual for the NVC to reject, but let's just talk about this in a more general sense. So first of all, on the I-140, we the lawyers typically list an embassy on the I-140 form, and then that becomes the default. So for instance, if you are a Filipino nurse practicing in Dubai, when we're completing the I-140, we would contact you and ask where you would want to be interviewed. And if you said, I would like my interview to happen in Dubai, that's what we would put in the I-140 form. And then there's nothing to be rejected. When the National Visa Center contacts us months later to pay the fee bill, it will be paid and the interview will happen in Dubai. If you have family back in the Philippines, that would be a follow to join that happens. We can't really begin that process until you have completed your process, because your family members do not have a right to get a visa until you get a visa. So the first point is whatever we say on the I-140 is the default, and there's no reason for it to be rejected. The second point is your family members, broadly speaking, can't really begin anything unless they're proceeding to the same embassy as you. And so it's very common for the family members to go to the Philippines in my example, but just recognize it's going to be a long time before they get their visas, because you need to move through your process before they can move through their process. Third, which is a constant theme that Mike and I say, which is we're generally we generally don't recommend moving your appointment from one location to the other after the I-140. It's because we don't recommend it because, as you're hearing today, it takes a long time for this process to move. And almost any time you're switching process, it's not a legal question if you can do it, but you are going to find it's going to take much longer than you expect it to take. So that's the third point, which is, if possible, you should try and stay consistent with the visa office that you initially requested on the I-140. So I think somewhere in there, I've probably answered this person's question, although I'm not entirely sure where.
Well, I think the bottom line, I think you did, Chris, but I think the bottom line for anybody who's deciding which consulate they're going to go to is to take very serious thought about that before you actually put that on your application, and make sure that you consult with your lawyer if you do have family in another country, so that you can understand the repercussions, because there will be significant delays if you try and change consulates. As the lawyers have said. Hanrad is watching from the UAE, Zanya from Toronto, Nwafor from Nigeria. John Paul is asking, is it possible that me and my dependent wife will join with me in the same flight going to the US? Because some I've heard that the primary would be the first to arrive, then the wife arrives after a month or so. Is that accurate? I just want to confirm, because I want to be in the same flight going there. Mike, does it matter when a nurse and the spouse get the visa, go to the consulate, get the stamp, if they arrive in the United States at different times?
No. So normally, if someone wants, John Paul, if they want you to arrive first and your wife wants to wait for 30 days, she needs a 30-day break from you, buddy, or something. or she wants you to get the house all set up and everything ready, and then she's coming in. But from a legal perspective, there's no difference. It doesn't matter. They may be practical things, such as it might take, depending on what state you're coming into, it might take a little while to get your state license, so you're not able to start working immediately. Maybe you're going to be in temporary housing. Maybe the kids are in school, and so they want to finish the school, and then the dependents arrive later. So there's all kinds of life practical things that would control when people join and when people actually fly into the U.S. But from a legal perspective, there's not. As Chris mentioned at the very beginning, one of the steps is you get a visa stamp at the consulate, and it's generally good for 6 months. And you've got to enter in with those 6 months. But the consulate doesn't care when those 6 months, when you actually enter. So I think there's some flexibility there for you guys to do it any way that works for you and for your employer. And I can't imagine an employer caring whether the wife's on the flight with you or not.
Okay, so there you go, John Paul. And that's what I love about Onwards and Upwards show, is that I'm sure John Paul is probably sitting at home thinking about this question, worrying about it. And we're so glad and grateful to both Mike and Chris for giving your time and sharing light and information that can hopefully put a lot of people's minds at ease. So thank you. Carla is asking, I have my I-140 approved, but no fee bill until now. It has been 6 months. What could the reason be for this, Chris?
Yeah, the reason is just bureaucratic delays. It's likely nothing specifically wrong with your petition. 6 months after approval with no fee bill being issued, that's where I would unquestionably get the law firm and your employer involved. And it's probably getting to the point where we might want to look at congressional assistance as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Hopefully it will be resolved soon, Carla. Mildred, my son is already 21 years old last November. Is it possible for him to go with me in the US, Mike?
So, Mildred, if you're looking to file now a new case and the case is not already started, then the answer is no. Your son would have been already what's called aged out. 21 is the max. If your case was already filed several years ago, then it depends upon how long your case took. There's a old law called the Child Status Protection Act that has a complicated formula for when a child actually arrives at the age of 21, and it's not on their 21st birthday. It combines a variety of things, such as how long your I-140 was pending, when your party date became current, and a variety of other factors. So if you have an existing case, you want to reach out to your attorney, make sure they're aware you have a 21-year-old child, and see what can be done, of whether they qualify under the CSPA. If you're looking at filing a new case, then the son would not come with you. Your son would have to look at other options, whether it's come as a student, whether it is be sponsored through some other employment status that they may be eligible for through their own education and their experience, but they would not be able to come as a dependent.
Okay. And Mildred, maybe your son is a nurse, and if so, then he can come here on his own green card, or maybe even come and study in the United States. Joy asks, can someone be given a visitor's visa for the purpose of NCLEX testing? Chris?
Yes, but normally the NCLEX is offered around the world. But if you can get a visitor's visa, yeah, you can enter the United States and take the exam.
Yeah, but Joy, it depends. I'm not sure exactly where you're based, but there are many NCLEX centers around the world. So hopefully you can take that in your home country or close to your home country. Okay, I'm just looking at the clock, and we've got a lot of questions here. Some things we've already answered. So I'm going to ask, Rain has a question. When paying for the $220 green card fee, what address should we input? Mike, any thoughts on that one?
Absolutely none. I have no idea.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I would put the address that you expect to be living in the United States would be the most likely address that I would list.
Correct. And Rain, you can always speak to your employer or your recruitment company, who could probably give you some insight as well on that question. Okay, I also have, I haven't even got to the questions that were sent to us. Joy has a question. I'm having a problem with my social security and my green card. I've been in the US for 3 months now, and I still haven't received either. What is the issue and what can I do, Mike?
Yeah, so that tends to be usually relate to when you entered at the airport and were given a CBP stamp, that a little miscommunication there. And normally there are several ways that can be solved, often with a combination of the local CBP office. So if you are now in Austin, Texas, but you flew into LA, then there's work that can be done with the Austin CBP office to make sure that you are properly in the system. And it can generally be done fairly quickly. Once you recognize that that's a problem, reach back out to your recruiter / employer / attorney, and they can assist you in doing that. But it does happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens often enough that there's a process for fixing it. And 3 months is certainly worth. It should have already been resolved before then. So I would definitely.
Yeah. So Joy, hopefully you'll be able to resolve that quickly, and anybody else who has that kind of issue. Beatrice is asking, I have a friend with NCLEX, but is out of status. She was an international student, but for some reason she was out of status. Can she still apply to come to the United States, Chris?
Yeah, so this is pretty straightforward answer, which is it's not the kind of answer we want to do second or third hand over an internet web call. She needs to contact an attorney. In many instances, she's going to be fine. In some instances, she's going to be barred from entering the United States for maybe as many as 10 years. So she needs a lawyer to specifically look at her case. And if she's been out of status, she probably wants to get a lawyer to look at it quickly, because the longer she's out of status, the greater the penalties can be.
Okay. All right. So Beatrice, that's something that you need to advise your friend to speak to a lawyer, and they can speak to her about her specific case and see what the remedy, if any, that she can get. But really a caution warning for anyone not to be out of status, and really to take care in situations like that. Okay. Ukwayu, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, is from Nigeria. Has been documentary qualified since October the 10th, 2022, requested an expedite letter, which was approved on the 31st of October, but until now was not given an interview date. At first, I believed when I called them, and the embassy said that they would work according to how they received the cases. But I heard that candidates from other agencies were given IDs when 2 to 3 weeks out. Why am I not getting it? And I've heard my colleagues are getting their interview dates. Mike?
Yeah, well, I don't think being DQ'd in October and not being interviewed yet here the first week of January is significantly unusual. So I would not be terribly concerned at this point in time. You can talk to your attorney or your recruiter to see how other individuals are going. But I would not view this as unusual at any consulate right now.
Okay. All right. So, and sometimes I think, and Chris, maybe you can comment on this as well. Sometimes I think what happens is, somebody gets an expedite or is waiting, feeling impatient, feeling anxious, which is very understandable, and then hears about a friend that gets their interview date quicker at another consulate or even at the same consulate. Can you comment on that? Because, I think sometimes a lot of nurses don't realize that, it's very tricky to kind of compare your case to another case.
Yeah, and it's got to be enormously frustrating when, you have a friend and their case moves in a month or two and yours is still sitting there after 3 months. That's enormously frustrating. I can certainly understand it. But my experience is most of the time, it's not a deficiency with your case. In fact, I'll bet there are some nurses who, if your friend did it in a month and yours is still pending at 3 months, my guess is there's probably some nurses who are actually pending still for 5 months. And so you definitely want to benchmark yourself against other nurses, but consider that there may also be nurses behind you. And the real challenge and the frustrating part for Mike and I, who handle, hundreds of these cases, thousands of them, is this inconsistency in time frame. And so I completely appreciate it. I think it's very reasonable to benchmark yourself on that. I certainly think it's understandable to be frustrated by it, but you want to do some investigating and not sort of end the analysis there. And in certain instances, we want to take some of the tactics that we've talked about today, such as nagging and nudging some of these officials.
Absolutely. Okay. Francesca has a question. How long do you need to be married before you can file a green card visa for your spouse? And how long do you need to be in the America before you can apply for a visa for your spouse?
How
long do you need to be married?
Yeah.
Can it be immediate, like as soon as you're married?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no time frame. Once you get married, you can immediately file. So how fast that process goes after you file is going to depend upon a variety of factors, such as where you're living, and what USCIS office has the case, and a variety of factors like that, and where the consulate is. There's also variables based on whether you're a green card holder or whether you're a citizen. So there's some variables, but there's no waiting period that you have to be married for a certain period of time before you can apply for your spouse. It can be immediate. Now, if your spouse, you guys have had a very short courtship, a week, and then you get married, the USCIS may have questions as to whether there's a legitimate marriage. But in circumstances where there is a legitimate marriage, there is absolutely no waiting period whatsoever.
Okay, there you go, Francesca. Okay, I'm looking at the time. Last question. What Quar is asking, I'm a registered nurse in Pakistan, having 10 years license experience. How much time it will take for the hiring process of Connetics, and how can we expedite this process? So Waqar, assuming you have passed your NCLEX exam, because obviously you need your NCLEX exam in order to apply. Chris, if Waqar has got the NCLEX, how long could you typically expect if we're filing an I-140 today before Waqar would be available to come into the United States?
Yeah, so I would expect that she'll be entering the United States before the end of this year, hopefully a few months before the end of 2023. In terms of expedite, and Mike was saying this, everybody uses the term expedite. If there was an easy way to expedite cases, Mike and I would use them on every case. So that don't be fooled by this idea of expedite. It's in our interest at the law firm. It's in Tanya's interest. It's in your employer's interest to make the process move as fast as possible. So you almost never need to ask if there's a way to expedite the case, because if there is, we are going to do that. But to answer the question, yeah, they should be able to enter the United States before the end of the year, probably several months before the end of the year.
Okay, well, there you go. So that is a great way to end the show on a very positive note. Just one thing to add, though, as I'm just thinking about that expedite process, Waqar, I don't know if maybe you're referring to like premium processing as an expedite technique. We have spoken about premium processing before, but that is a tool that we can use. The employer would pay extra at the I-140 stage, and that is a tool from the Connetics side anyway that all of our clients use to expedite cases. So that is the one thing that we can definitely use as an expedite tool. So on that positive note, I want to thank our guests, Chris and Mike, for joining us on our monthly Q&A legal question and answer. I know that we didn't get to all the questions in the chat, and I literally have pages on my desk of more questions that have been sent over the last month. So hopefully we'll be back next month, and we will be going through more of these questions. Before everybody signs off, please note upcoming shows. We have Onwards and Upwards. We have some fabulous shows that are coming up on the 13th of January. we have a new segment. It is Connetics Career Day. We have a number of Connetics employers that will be coming on. It's kind of like find your match, like speed dating, where we've got employers that are going to be coming on and sharing about their opportunity, their hospital, their location. This is a great way for you to learn very quickly about some of the top employers in the United States. So please watch out for next week's shows. Tell your friends. It's going to be a fabulous show, and we're really, really excited about that. On the 20th, we have Stateside, where we'll be showcasing California, what it's like to live and work in California, and it's tax season. So on the 27th, we're going to be talking about how to pay your taxes in the United States. Very, very important topic. Connetics College every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific time. Check the time in your location. Our wonderful partners, Aspire, have an NCLEX class on the 9th. Swish have a PTE class on the 16th. iPass have an NCLEX class on the 23rd, and Niners an IELTS class on the 30th of January. And then last but not least, our Connetics initiatives. Remember, every Connetics nurse gets a free English scholarship. We have an NCLEX scholarship for selected nurses, $1,000 referral fee extended until January 31st. Listen to our podcast, Nursing in America. We have a direct hire program, our show every Friday, Onwards and Upwards, the Connetics College every Monday, and lots of allied needs as well. So with that said, thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great weekend. Onwards and upwards.
Thanks, Tanya.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.